I'm gonna shut up now.
Are we good to go?
I think so. Are you?
Yep, okay.
Are you all good to go? Are you sure? All right.
Ready to see the sausage get made on how we report on compliance, right? So this is the slide I'm required to put in here by the overlords of Cisco Live. If you want to get on, there is going to be a WebEx space where we've got myself and a bunch of the Splunk engineers that were engaged in this project, a bunch of the leadership. So if you have any questions that come up afterwards, I'll be on there monitoring them. They'll be on there monitoring them. They're on there actually right now. So if you have questions come up, go ahead and shoot them in there right now if you want. So this is what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about the goal, where we're going to talk about all the different mandates, regulations, compliance requirements, et cetera. And then we're going to go specifically into Comply to Connect and how we execute it, how we get the data, and then how we represent that data in a proactive form with dashboards in Splunk. So the beauty of it all is that this solves not only the requirements that DIS is putting out for customers that have to do Comply to Connect, but it also gives you guys the ability to go poke the belly button on whoever needs to start doing checks on our patches getting pushed correctly, our endpoint configurations being monitored and applied correctly, et cetera. So we'll go through, we got a couple of demos, videos, unfortunately, because the Wi-Fi is just not fast enough for me to show it to you live. But then there's also some click-throughs that you guys can have access to. I'll post those in the WebEx room, where you can go through and click through the exact demo that we're going to show you on Splunk as well. All right. That's the one thing I forgot to check.
All right. Well, while we're fixing that, show of hands, how many know what Comply to Connect is, or what we call C2C? All right, all right. How many know what Zero Trust is? All right, so Comply to Connect, for those that don't know what Comply to Connect is like a stepping stone to Zero Trust. Does that make sense? All right. And while Chad's doing this, I want to introduce myself real quick. I'm ZigZsiga. I'm a principal architect at Cisco. I lead the Comply to Connect solution for the CX organization. I also lead the Zero Trust architecture team, the business architecture team, and the AI team on the CX side. I do a lot, obviously. For those that know what Comply to Connect is, are you guys doing any of the steps today in production? So let's do step one. Who's doing step one today? Got a few of you. Are you doing step two? Those ones? Okay, keep your hands up if you're doing step three. All right, so really only, you are? Okay. Step four? Step five? Yeah, okay, all right, that's cool. That's awesome. It's a lot of work, right?
It has been, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. We're also in the beta program, so
Okay, yeah. That's awesome, it's a lot of work. Question? Yeah. So the question was, there's rumors about Icebridge, and if we are the good people to talk about it, we can talk about it. My team built Icebridge. My team also built the CX, we call it the CX reporting tool, but you guys probably on the customer side think of it as the C2C reporting tool. So if you have questions on that, I can answer those questions after the session. Does that work? All right.
All right, we are in now. Apologies for that. So we've got a couple Slido questions in here, polls, et cetera. So if you guys want to jump on the Slido, put in some things that will help us with understanding what you guys see as context, what you guys see as how the tool works, et cetera. So if you can jump on that, that would be appreciated. And it'll help us have some more conversation, be able to tailor it a little bit more to you guys, right? So we're going to talk about the goal. The most secure device, most secure device is a powered off device in the closet, not connected to any network, right? It could be out of date on patches, but it's never going to compromise anything. Everybody knows that, right? But the reality is that we have all these programs, memos, mandates, requirements, et cetera, that we have to follow. I put most of the ones that I've read, unfortunately, from front to back, trying to figure out, hey, what are the things that we need to be able to do to report on compliance? What are the attributes that we need to grab, et cetera? As we know, or hopefully know, NDAA, which is that one on the top right, that was what started Comply to Connect back in 2017. So nothing was really defined in that. It just said, hey, everybody needs to do Comply to Connect to allow devices to connect to the Department of Defense network. But when we look at all these compliance mandates and requirements, they all come down to what you see on the screen, right? It's all about context. It's no longer just a simple attribute of, hey, this is the user, or password, a certificate, a device, anything. We want to say it's a combination of all of those things that define what level of access I'm going to grant that device at the time of connection. And when we talk about context, it comes from multiple tools. Right? There's not one tool that manages everything across every single device that's out there. We've got IoT assets, we've got workstations, we've got servers, we've got network infrastructure, et cetera.
Hey, Tom, I got a quick question, everyone, all right? So I know there's a lot that are on the government space, and you guys know what comply to connect is at a high level, right? Head nods, et cetera. So for the people in the room that don't really know what comply to connect is, what model are you guys following? I'm gonna do it by show of hands. Are you following like ZigZsiga version 1? Show of hands, anyone? ZigZsiga version 2? Zero trust architecture frameworks of some sort? NIST? Got NIST? Okay. Just trying to get an idea what everyone else is kind of following, right? So if you don't know what comply to connect is, these other ones I'm mentioning are other frameworks. They were on the slide right there a minute ago. There are a lot of frameworks. Everyone has their own framework. I'm thinking of building my own framework. Zig's awesome zero trust architecture framework or security framework. The point is that everyone has a framework. You got to figure out which one that you're following and run through that process to make it happen. Does that make sense? Head nods, yeah? Okay. Sorry, Jay.
Yeah, and Zig brought up 800.207. You'll see it here in a couple slides, but 800.207, zero trust, DoD zero trust. Comply to connect is really a stepping stone to that, and we'll show some of those elements as well. So as I said, we're going to ask some questions. What does context mean to you guys? Go ahead and type it in. If you're on the Slido, it'll pop up here on the screen for you.
I know, we said it was going to be interactive, right? Oh, damn. Got to do work.
There's only like one or two more of these, I promise. Okay, painting a picture. That's a good one. Anybody else?
One.
Oh, we got some typers. Okay.
We have one.
Give it about 30 more seconds for you guys here. So painting a picture is a good one, right? So it's about, just all the different colors coming together makes a picture of what you're supposed to be showing to someone, right? So if we just had paint on a canvas with no differentiation in color, it would just be black or blue or green, right? It would be just a password or a certificate or whatever. Attributes of a user or system, that's another good one. So again, going a step beyond just a credential into a credential and it's a trusted asset, or it's a managed device, or it's a mobile device, or a public user. What was it? Understanding the details, okay? Yeah. We're gonna go into details. There's about 106 of them that are required for Comply to Connect, and we'll show you those.
Not too many, right? It's not that much.
Those are all good ones. And like I said, it all leads to zero trust, right? This is 800.207. And the one thing I always like to call out here is that when we talk about zero trust and when we talk about Comply to Connect, we talk about any of these frameworks, it's about a subject accessing a resource. And where are we going to put that security? Where are we going to put that enforcement within that plane of the user accessing a website or a server talking to another server, application to database, for instance, right? So policy enforcement point is the key part when we look at how we're enforcing not only zero trust, but a Comply to Connect. And that policy enforcement point can be one or many products, right? But we're gonna have to get all of them to talk to each other, and we're also gonna have to get data elements from each of those products into the tool. So a lot of words here. I'm not gonna read this whole slide, but this is from this 800.207. These are the guiding principles, right? It's all about resources, computing devices, services, et cetera, resources. And the big one here is per session basis and dynamic policy, right? We want to apply it on a per session basis based on that context and then be able to change policy either dynamically at time of connection or at any time during the connection. So when we talk about continuous monitoring, continuous compliance, dynamic policy is a requirement. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into the DoD here real quick, because if we look at that previous slide and we also look at the DoD zero trust reference architecture principles, you'll see a lot of very similar things. Monitoring and assessment, authentication authorization, all connections are enforced, et cetera. So the concept of zero trust is that no network is a trusted network. Everything must be done on a per session basis no matter what the network construct is. So I know you can't read this. You have the slides. Again, if you go into the WebEx app, you can actually download the PDF of these slides, so you can have those. But I could tell you, without even looking at it, there's 7 direct callouts of C2C on that fan chart. And for those who aren't familiar with what this fan chart is, those are the 7 pillars of zero trust as DoD defines it. It goes all the way from user, all the way into data, right? Network, servers, infrastructure, et cetera. And then finally it goes into visibility analytics, which is a big one that we'll be talking mostly on today. So I know there weren't a lot of hands raised when we said, who knows what Comply to Connect is? So I'm gonna go into exactly what it is at a real high level here. To get the real nitty-gritty details, I can't give them to you. You have to have a CAT card to get them, just because they're behind the authentication wall of Comply to Connect.
And that's a government card, just so we're clear. Common access card, that's what it is, right?
Yep. Yeah, so as I mentioned, NDAA is where this all started. You can see in Section B here, a Comply to Connect policy that requires devices to automatically comply before granting access to the network. Not connect, then comply, it's comply to connect, right? We want to make sure that we validate, verify that the device is compliant before we grant full network access.
This is the first time that term came up. Just so
Very first time.
That's the very first time that term came up, and now we all know it as Comply to Connect.
Yep. So out of that, there were these steps that were designed or developed, right? The 5 steps of Comply to Connect. And you see it goes through discovery, identification, interrogation, remediation, and then what was authorized, and then situational awareness, right? So we go through all these steps, and that's what Zig was asking earlier. What step are you on? Step 4 technically is slated for September of this year, I believe it is. And then step 5 is supposed to be in June of 2026. And anybody know when the time frame is to get to target level zero trust for DoD? 2027.
Yeah. So just a little time.
Not a whole lot of time to go from one to the next, but we're going to go through the steps in detail real quick here, and then we're going to go into exactly how we collect that data and represent it.
And real quick, just to add, so we're going to go through these steps. So those that don't know what Comply to Connect is, you're going to be able to relate to this. Even though you may not know what the C2C and Comply to Connect memorandum states, you're going to be able to take this and run with it with whatever framework you're using in your environment.
Yeah,
right?
100%. So step 1, all about discovery, identification, right? It's all about identifying what are the devices that are connected to the network, where are they connected to the network, getting that inventory and near real-time awareness of, hey, I've got Netgears and I've got PlayStations and Xboxes. No joke, I've had that happen on an Army base before, and people came and said, where? And then they left. And then those Xboxes disappeared off the network.
Surprise, surprise. It was my Xbox, man.
But this is all about getting that identification of what's on the network. So we weren't even talking about full authentication or authentic NAC yet in step 1. This is really just getting an inventory of devices that are on the network. Now, before Comply to Connect even came out, there were requirements out there to do authentication. So a lot of times there were devices getting denied on the network, et cetera. But the one thing I want to call out on this slide is that we don't want to look at it from a single solution. We want to look at the ability to say, hey, my network access control orchestration tool is bringing in context, additional context from other tools to make decisions at connection time, as well as it's sharing that contextual data with those other tools so that they can make decisions when they need to remediate or when they need to take an action or whatever it may be. So step 2 and 3, all about initial NAC compliance, so network emission control. Since the days of positron and Cisco NAC way back in 2006,
You just
something like
dated
that.
yourself.
But this is all about interrogate and auto remediate. So looking at the endpoint, saying, is the device up to date on patches? Has it checked in with my Mecum server? Is it does it have the appropriate registry keys? Is it owned by us, et cetera, right? And then if not, we need to take that action, remediate that device before granting full access. So going from that, hey, I've got a device that's got out-of-date services, I'm going to execute that remediation, and subsequently it's going to go to compliance. If it can't remediate itself, we still want to take a level of action. It's just going to be a different path, right? if we're unable to remediate. So we'll say, disk encryption is not turned on. That takes time. That's a manual action in a lot of cases that you have to go in and execute. So in that case, things like opening a ticket, notifying people to start that, being proactive about it and not waiting for that user to say, hey, I can't do my job because you turned this tool on, right? And the next one's always a little bit of a conflict for me because step 4 is authorizing the connection. Well, if you're doing step 4, or if you're doing step 2 and 3, where you're interrogating and remediating, wouldn't have I already authorized the device onto the network to be able to identify if it's compliant or not, right? In some limited access state until compliance is verified as truthful. So, if you're doing step 2 and 3, you're already doing step 4 with solutions like Cisco ICE, right? And then, as I mentioned previously, we can run them through that whole phase, and every device has a different compliance status, based on what type of device it is. So, we're going to say you're non-compliant. We need to remediate you. We remediated you. You're on the network. So, all automated, all dynamic policy change. One of the key tenets of zero trust.
Like the Holy Grail.
Comply to connect. Yeah.
Like the Holy Grail. Quick question, you guys. So I'm going to just jump back to step 1 real quick. How many of you, show of hands, have full visibility of all your endpoints today? You're saying kind of. You're saying kind of. You rose your hand all the way up. You're supposed to, but do you? That was. You're with him? Yeah. All right. Yeah. I was just curious, because that's a big thing for me. Do you have visibility of all your endpoints? Do you know what's out there? Do you know that I have an Xbox in your environment, right? I know it's a dumb example, right? Do you know there's a random server that's in the, the access layer that's critical, but no one really knows what it's doing, right? That kind of stuff. I'm just curious.
Knowing where the assets are too is another part of identifying,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Like Zig talked about, a server existing out at some remote location that you don't know is out there, and all of a sudden it goes down, or network connectivity happens, or to not be connecting, and
And that never happens, right?
Never
There's
happens.
never a server in the access layer that happens to be critical, right? Yep.
Use that to inventory data that doesn't require a session, like map or 21x. You've got these servers that are in your data center, they're on a virtual switch, they're not authenticating, they don't have a session established with ICE. So how are you going to get that data into ICE in order to inventory? Because it's an enormous problem. It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
SNMP is about the only way I figured out how to do it.
Yeah, and SNMP is a great tool for initial discovery. It's just not something that happens immediately, right? You got to poll on a certain interval, or you got to wait for a trap to come in, or whatever it may be, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides here. Step 5, I'll say this outright, the bullet points, these are the bullet points that you can find if you search for Comply to Connect, but the actual reporting requirements around step 5 have not been defined yet. So those 106 attributes that we talked about, I'm sure there's going to be some more for step 5. I just don't know what they are yet, so I can't tell you. But we'll go through, and I will argue again that if you're doing step 2, 3, 4, you're already doing 5 of the 6 bullet points on this slide, right? If you're doing authentication and reaching out to Active Directory or reaching out to a certificate server, doing OCSP checks, you're integrating with the Identity Credential Access Management System. If you're doing compliance and you're integrated with the threat and vulnerability system, you're already doing, that is part of compliance, which is part of step 3, right? Or 2 and 3. So how do we execute on it? So starting out with, basic radius, right? You said radius and MAB. Radius is instant visibility. If you have radius enabled on every switch port that anybody can plug into, I don't know if it was in here, but I was looking at wall jacks. Maybe it was right outside the door, right, where they have all the signage. If those ports don't have .1x turned on, well, guess what? I can plug in my Xbox and start a LAN party, right? But the reality is that if you have radius turned on, immediately when that device connects, you're going to know, hey, there's a device here. I know a little bit about it. So when we look at that top left picture, I know that I've got a Cisco device because I know the MAC address is an OUI owned by Cisco. I don't know that it's a phone yet. I can wait for SNMP to take place. I can do a trap. It'll go out and do an SNMP poll. But a lot of the switches out there from Cisco and third parties send data in that radius packet under what they call vendor-specific attributes. And Cisco switches specifically have a function called device sensor, where we capture things like DHCP, CDP, LLDP, et cetera, and we send that data up. So when you look at this slide, you can see that at 4:08, what, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, the device connected, and a minute later, I knew it was a Cisco IP phone. Because all that data on the right-hand side got sent up to ICE to say, hey, I know more context about this device, here it is. And immediately I'm able to say, within 1 minute, I know it's a phone.
Does that mean in 1 minute you're going to know my Xbox is connected? And then you're going to block it?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody see that blank row in the middle there? Anybody know what it is? Who's on the Slido? People on the Slido, go ahead and punch in what you think it is. Zig's going to take a guess.
Did the endpoint was deleted by administrator? I think that's it. Maybe it's the endpoint disconnected from the network.
Okay, we got change of authorization. Anybody else? Somebody else has played with ICE, I think, because it is a change of authorization, right? So SNMP, like I said, very poll specific. I will also say that, hey, COA is a push versus a pull mechanism. I'm a little bit old. I remember back when I had my POP3 email going to my BlackBerry, or what was it, RIM server before it became BlackBerry.
How many of you know what POP3 is? I gotta just query real quick. Okay.
Yeah. So we no longer have that scenario of, hey, my phone needs to reach out to my RIM server and say, hey, do you have any email messages for me? It now says, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, hey, you've got an email. So COA works in the same way. The ICE or the Network Access Control System or Splunk or Tenable, any of those tools that are integrating with your Comply to Connect solution are saying, hey, this device has now got something different. It's going to initiate a COA and it's going to restart that authorization process to put that user or that device into the appropriate posture status or the appropriate network access. So that's exactly what we see with the phone going from unknown to a phone or a printer, or a device going from compliant to non-compliant.
That all makes sense, right? Yeah? Okay.
I've said it about probably 10 times already, but third-party integrations, pulling in data from other resources, other databases, et cetera. So things like your ServiceNow instances, things like I'm showing Metagate over here. So being able to pull that additional data or context in, guess what? I could go from 1 minute from identifying it was a Cisco IP phone to I already knew it was a Cisco IP phone before it connected because it's already been provisioned with a tool that told me before it actually got shipped out to wherever it was, et cetera. So I immediately know this is a phone, put it on the voice VLAN, let it on. So I'm going to show you a demo of how this can be done, not only with your standard integrations that are on the list of approved integrations and things like that, but there's a neat feature in ICE called PXGrid Direct, where I can make a call to any API and say, hey, API, give me data. And I now know that MAC address is this type of device or has these vulnerabilities on it, and I'm going to show it to you with like category 1 STIG findings in the demo later.
And that data is that context, right? That context that you want to be able to make decisions on.
So step 2 and 3, all about segregating devices and remediating. So I'll give you a little bit of insight of something that's coming on this slide as well, but within ICE we have the ability of saying things like remediate this device every 4 hours or every hour, recheck the posture assessment. Every time the device connects, I can run it through posture assessment. But when it comes to segregation or segmentation on the network, there's a lot of different tools that you can use there, not only with Cisco networks with things like scalable group tags, but also downloadable ACLs, static ACLs, filter IDs, and VLAN assignments, right? Done VLAN assignments with pretty much every switch that you could think of, Brocade, Juniper, Extreme, et cetera. It's all part of the standard, and it's actually why we went to Radius instead of SNMP for our NAC solution within Cisco.
So just your policy, like that's going to be imperative, right? You're going to have a policy. It's going to say this is the access you're going to get, whatever that access is, whatever you determine the use case is. How you implement the policy can be whatever you want to do it, like downloadable ACLs, SGTs, dynamic VLAN assignment. Those are just functions, right? You can choose what functions you want to leverage to enforce that segregation. Does that make sense?
The other one I want to bring up is the ability to run scripts, right? We've gone to this, infrastructure as code. We've gone into, Ansible automation, et cetera, YAML files, and so forth. The ability to say, hey, I can run compliance checks in any way, shape, or form that I want to, as long as I know how to script it and say 1 or 0, pass or failed, right? So the ability to go in and say, hey, on any Linux system, any server operating system, on any Windows device, run a PowerShell script, execute, and it's going to return back whether passed or failed. So it gives you that real simple way to say, hey, there's no checkbox or way to click on, I want to check for this particular thing, which we have to do a lot with Comply to Connect. The ability to run anything that you want, right?
And you heard that. He said it twice. You can literally run anything you want. Anything. You have to write it.
Yeah. And
maybe.
the last bullet point you see there is an important one too, is that when we're running scripts, we have the ability to run them as a system administrator or system user, right? So don't worry about your devices being locked down by all the GPOs, because the ICE posture module is running as that system user. So again, I can do anything I want as a system user, right? All right, so you're going to think I'm crazy on this one, because a lot of people do think I am crazy, but hear me out, as it says. We talked about MECM. We talked about getting the compliance from the source of truth, getting it from the system that's responsible for managing those attributes, managing that function of the system, right? So when I talk about compliance with customers, a lot of times, it's don't overthink it. If you've got MECM saying that the device is compliant with this baseline, or SCCM, or you've got JAMP, or whatever tool that you're using for endpoint management, that's the tool that you're using for endpoint management. Let's not check each of those things individually again. Let's say, hey, is this device in compliance with what you say it needs to be? Then if yes, good. If no, then we need to remediate it. We can run a script. We can, whatever we want to do.
Everyone knows what MECM is, right? Show of hands. Or if you don't know what MECM is, show of hands.
Microsoft Endpoint Compliance Manager. So SCCM, if you remember that, or WSUS.
WSUS.
Yeah.
All the different names. Just want to make sure, so yeah.
My apologies.
You're good, man.
I work for the Department of Defense, so I use acronyms for everything, right? I also work for Cisco. We use acronyms for everything.
We make up our own acronyms.
And we change them every couple of weeks, too. So don't overthink it. Rely on those resources. Again, I think Zig said it 3 times before we even started the session, from the source, right? Source of truth. Get that data from there. And then step 4 is all about authorizing and enforcing and getting situational awareness. Things like vulnerabilities, things like compliant versus non-compliant, operating system data, et cetera.
This is the easy part, I think.
This is the easy
This is the easy part, right? 4 and 5, this is easy. The hard part's 1 and 2 and kind of 3.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be dependent on your environment. Like I'm not diminishing each other's environments here, right? But in the grand scheme of things, I think that's 4 and 5 are easier.
So the session was about compliance reporting from the source of truth. So we're going to talk about how we get those sources of truth, and we're going to go into the nitty-gritty details of syslog message codes, scripts and API inputs, et cetera. So that's what we're about to go into.
So there should not be any comment that this wasn't technical enough, right? Like we're going to go really in the weeds a little bit here.
A little bit, yeah. Anybody know who Mark Twain is? So data's like garbage. You better know what you're going to do with it before you start collecting it, right? We want to make sure we get very specific data for the requirements that we have and the data that we want to actually collect. And as Zig mentioned earlier, right, getting all the data from everything into everything, I don't know what to do in my hands, right? It's like there's so much data, I'm swimming in it, and I can't find the actual problems, or I can't find the things that I'm looking for, because it's just matched with everything else.
Data is gold, right? Your data is the most important thing. If you're getting bad data, you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to block something that you shouldn't block, and you're going to allow something that you shouldn't allow.
Yep. So as I mentioned, in the Comply to Connect world, over 106 different attributes. This is a sampling of some of them. But the kind of the main goal, and when Zig brought up talking about how do you know every device that's on your network? Well, not only do you know every device that's on your network, but do you know all the data elements of classification of, hey, it's running this operating system, it's running this firmware, it's got this serial number, it's got this much disk space, this much memory, all of those things. Those are all data elements that we're capturing in the Comply to Connect program, and we're representing that. And the way we represent it is from, again, an architecture of tools, the sources of truth. And what the Department of Defense and the Comply to Connect program calls this is a master endpoint record. So hundreds of attributes jammed together based on a common value, so MAC address, system UUID, IP address. Not ideal, but sometimes it does. That's the only thing we can do. But we get all the way down into that nitty-gritty of serial numbers, CPUs, et cetera. And anybody play telephone game when you were younger? Right? If I tell you something and we have to go all the way through the class here, right? By the time it gets back to the back, it's going to be completely different. And it's also going to be what? Stale, old, because I told it to you 10 minutes ago and it took that long to get back there, right? So getting that data from the source of truth is a key element of saying, hey, I know what this device is at the most real time that I can, and I'm getting it from the system that is the authoritative source of that data. The authoritative source of the endpoint is, I have this number of CPUs in my system, right? Not some CMDB that when they provisioned it, it had 16 gigs of memory, but they ended up having to upgrade it to 32 later, and now it's completely different, right? So that's the gist here. So how do we get that data in? Uh-oh, we froze. Whoa.
Oh.
That's my fault, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened on here, though. That was just...
It's not showing up now. It's got a different session.
What was that?
Hey, Chris, can you come help us real quick? Sorry, everyone. No, we were just trying to keep, it just dropped over on its own. It's showing a different slide deck. Is that our slide deck?
And I don't think it was my phone because it's not even on the phone.
These things happen.
Yeah.
It's the ghost in the network, that little ghost guy hanging out.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
All right. Sorry for that again. So getting the data in. So back to DoD Zero Trust. This is a screenshot from that document where it jumped out at me and I screamed, yes, this is exactly what I've been thinking of and saying for years. And that key point is those blue and green lines, attributes, values, and telemetry. If you remember the fan chart I showed you with the 7 pillars, that's what's around the outside here, right? So when we look at things like authentication, authorization, inventory systems, et cetera, that's your users and devices on the left-hand side here. Guess what? Something like Cisco ICE doing network and mission control is telling the network to put it into this VLAN, to assign this scalable group tag, to assign this ACL to the network infrastructure. And that subsequently is allowing those users and devices to access those applications and workloads, right? We've got that full flow. But guess what? We want to get all of that data about what's happening, when it's happening, how it's happening into what I loosely call the Splunk layer here at the bottom, visibility analytics, automation orchestration, and that aggregated telemetry of data flowing back and forth between them to be able to say, here's all of the data together as one particular system.
So this is the DoD Zero Trust framework, right? The 7 pillars. So those that aren't in the federal space or the DoD space, you're going to have a model that has pillars. All of you see here is happening in that model too. We just picked the DoD one to show and present here, but so it should resonate for you if you're following NIST again or CISA or whatever. It should resonate that all this is still happening in that model, all right?
So from there we said, hey, let's go ahead and set it all up. How do we do all of this? How do we get all the data in, right? How do we integrate the systems together to operate as an orchestrated architecture, right? So we set up things like Cisco ICE and Catalyst Center and Mecum and Tenable and Splunk. And we set it up with all kinds of network infrastructure devices, all kinds of endpoint devices, all kinds of cloud assets, et cetera. And we said, how do we gather data about all of these endpoints? And to be honest, it all started with syslog, right? We all know what syslog is. We've been doing it for years, probably sometimes too much, right? Again, getting too much data. So we're going to go into the details of how we do this with syslog in something like Cisco ICE. So Cisco ICE, gives you the ability to break out how you log data based on different logging categories. So that goes right to what Mark Twain said, let's only collect the data that we want, everything else is garbage. So immediately I'm able to say, hey, I only want to get past authentication, failed attempts, I only want to get posture and compliance information, et cetera. And I put this in here because one of the important things is that when we start getting into all of those 106 attributes, it's going to be a large log. So ICE gives us the ability to max out to the largest that the RFC allows, which is 8192 bytes. And that allows us to get the full log content into a system like Splunk to be able to report on it. So message codes. Here's your 106 elements of data, right? We're going to start seeing them in real life. So message code 5200, message code 3000, 3002 is all about authentication and authorization, where the device is, the user name or machine name information if it authenticated, MAC address information, and then IP address, CDP data, et cetera. All of that's coming in, again, instant visibility, the value of radius, COA, profiling, all that stuff happening right then and there at the point of connection. The next thing is compliance and interrogation. So we're getting into step 2 now, right? So I've identified classified, now I'm going into step 2, and I have all of these things, all of these comply to connect checks that I'm running against every single system. All of these scripted inputs or scripted compliance requirements that I'm running on systems like Linux, right? And you can see here's the message codes that come in. So immediately on all these message codes, I'm able to say, hey, I saw this MAC address authenticate with this user ID or this machine credential. It went through posture. Here's the results of that posture. Marry those 2 logs together. And it had to get remediated. And remediation was successful or it failed. I now have all of that information right then and there. But as we've said a couple times already, we need to get even more data in. All right. So one of the things that Zig's been working with for a long time is a license on ICE called the analytics license.
How many of you know what the analytic license is? Yeah.
Couple? Okay.
Couple, handful.
So analytics license enabled the output of all of the application inventory data that we collect, all of the registry data that we collect, all of the hardware data that we collect, and the full data or full input of every single endpoint that ICE knows about. And it's done through a scripted input in this environment where I have the analytics license enabled. And when I run this option 16 and option 17 reports on ICE, it goes ahead and it creates all of those reports as CSV files and text files. So now I could pull all of that data in, marry it together with all of the data that I did for 802.1x authentication, compliance checks, et cetera. And now I have every application that's on that endpoint, every registry value that I wanted to look for, every piece of hardware information that I may want to look at. So,
quick question for the class. How many of you knew that ICE tracks the applications on the endpoints? Pretty much no one, right? A couple, right? Like I had to learn this too. I had no idea, and it doesn't show it. It doesn't show it in the GUI anywhere. Like you have to actually do these reports to get it right now. We're changing that. We're working with the BEs, BUs, whatever we're calling them today. And we're going to change that. But right now, you have to do these reports to get it. And you have to use the analytic license to access the data to get the reports. But I didn't know that. But that's pretty cool. So that we can actually use ICE to get all that information, send it to where we need to send it, and now we can make decisions on it.
Yeah.
You can now, yeah. Yep. Yes.
What was the question, Zig?
It wasn't a question. He's just saying you can see it in the visibility module now.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, this is all secure client data. So secure client's able to capture all of that data right on the endpoint itself. We can report it from the endpoint, individual posture checks, but you don't want to do all of that, right? This is when I run hardware application or hardware inventory, this is all the data that I get, right? So I don't want to do individual posture checks for each one of those things. Again, going back to source of truth, but we also want to do as few posture checks as needed, but collect as much data with those. And that's why we rely on that integration, that correlation with other systems as well, too. So when we talk about it in the Splunk world, those reports that we built and run on the ICE system, we now can pull all of those in straight from the ICE system into Splunk and correlate it with all of those logs that we just talked about with syslog. What if you don't have the analytics license? It seems like a lot of you might not have the analytics license today, right? So we also looked at how we can use the tools, common tools that exist in the environment. So again, going back to things like your Mecum or your Trellix or whatever solutions you're using for endpoint monitoring and management, they can send that data in as well. What we did is we played around a little bit with Tenable, and Tenable has this concept of audit files, where again, I can run any script that I want to on the endpoint with administrative permissions and subsequently gather that data and get that data into Splunk to get tied together with that other data, right?
You're seeing a theme, right? We're pulling data. We're trying to find how do we get the data into ICE or into Splunk so that we can make those decisions. There's different ways to get the data. So, you have a question?
So I know that the analytics, just so it's only has a license, I don't know what, from September or something like that.
Yep.
Are they being migrated to the GEMS contract?
So the question, just so the recording gets it real quick. So the question is, the analytic license at DISA is up in September. Sorry, it's in September. And is it migrating to the GEMS contract? They're currently negotiating that. I don't know where they're going to go with it. So there's a new renewal on the table. So.
Yeah. So DISA is in the process of renewing that. It is through GEMS. And then the licenses are also, the license is becoming more generally available above and beyond GEMS. So anybody, the non-DoD customers in here could also get it as well.
Exactly.
What's that?
Yeah, it's in flux right now. Right now, there's licenses. You got to ask DISA for the licenses, but they're up in September. So the way forward is being figured out. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Did that answer your question, though? Yeah. Okay. We have a question back here.
So analytics license isn't shown in the dashboard or anywhere on ICE that we can see. Is there a way of finding like orderability?
So the question is, just so I understand, the analytic license is shown in the dashboard. Is that not in ICE dashboard? You're talking about in how to order it, correct? Or are you talking about in ICE?
I'm talking about in ICE.
In ICE? Okay.
Basically, how do we get this to enterprise customers?
How do we get this to enterprise customers? How do we get the analytic license to enterprise customers?
Yeah,
You
so
already
it's being opened up to some more of the partners. So if you want to do it to a commercial customer right now, I can just reach out to me. I'll get you tied in with the BU counterpart that is handling the licensing, and we can get it ordered through that.
Yeah, we have an ordering guide that we can eventually hand out and that kind of stuff too. So we had to create all the content for it. Did that answer your question? All right. Any other questions while we have questions? Cool.
All right. So I meant to ask a question before I put the slide up here, but we all know that Comply to Connect doesn't just mean endpoints, right? It's your endpoints, your network infrastructure, your servers, your cloud resources, et cetera, right? So all of those things, we're getting data from all of those things. Network infrastructure is an easy one. With tools like Catalyst Center, SolarWinds, all of those tools, we can grab data from them. They're managing your network infrastructure. They have, again, the policy that network infrastructure should have on it, what the templates are that should be applied, et cetera. So what we did is we said, hey, how can I get that data out of Catalyst Center? Guess what? I can go grab the report from Catalyst Center with an API. Pull it in just like I did with the analytics license reports from ICE. I'm now getting that same telemetry as far as my network infrastructure goes. So being proactive with compliance. So I've said this a couple times, is what's on the slide. We've got all these data sources. We're not relying on just one. One gets us a lot of data, as you saw with what ICE can do. But then we also can use all of those other tools that are doing all those managements for all the different endpoints that you may have. And we're tying all that together with common attributes across all of those data sources. So MAC address to MAC address, IP address to IP address, UUID to UUID. And now I have all of these data elements for every single one of these endpoints.
I think this is really cool. I don't know about you. I know logging's not flashy, right? We're logging data, right? It's data. Who cares, right? But I think this is cool because we're taking multiple data sources. And this is just 4, but there's a lot more than 4, right? There's a lot. This slide's not big enough to have all the data sources on it. And we're creating a record for every endpoint that has all the data for that endpoint that we have. I think that's pretty cool. I know there's a lot of numbers and things, but that's pretty impressive.
So I promised you a demo. I actually have 2 of them.
Ooh,
So
you're overachieving here, 2 demos?
So the first one we're going to start out with is the Comply to Connect reporting application Advantage, which is all Splunk-based reporting. The app is available. If you want it, reach out to me. It's not on Splunk base yet. That's being worked on. But the app is available, so if you wanted to run it up, set it up in a Splunk instance that you have already, we can get those files over to you to do that. Go ahead.
So like you said, the app's available. You can order it now. Obviously, you can get ICE. You can get the app in Splunk. There's also services on the CX side, too, if you need help kind of gluing it all together. We have a validated design document. We've gone through and tested this in our own lab environment. So if you need the assistance, we can help you, too. And I would say use the space, the WebEx space, to ping me or Chad, and we can get you into contact with the sales team if you do want anything on either side, all right?
So with that, we'll start this. See if I can make it
This
work.
is the master endpoint record. This is all your endpoints and all the data. Sorry, I had to jump in.
So we start with the master endpoint record, right? So we're starting with, again, those common data elements, MAC address, UUID. We'll get to IP address further over here, but we're immediately seeing, hey, here's the endpoints that I have. Here's how I've classified them. They're part of workstations and servers. They're IoT. And then I'm going into, hey, when's the last time I saw this device? Has it been on my network in 2 years? And when's the last time it got scanned by my vulnerability system? Who was the last user on that device? Where was that device last connected? Or is it actively connected, right? So we go into, even down to the switch port, go find that Xbox real quick, right? And then we go into compliance. So we have all the compliance information as to why data has been, or why the device has been passed or failed. And then we get into that really nitty-gritty stuff, which is all of the serial numbers, CPUs, memory, disk space, et cetera. And then lastly, when we get all the way over here to the right, what we're going to see is a count and basically an inventory of how many times have I seen this device authenticate to the network in the last 30 days. So when we go back to step 4, that situational awareness of where's this device been, how's it been connecting, we have that full access, limited access, denied access, and counts of all of that data, and all of the identity and credential access management data that's required. So that's 106 attributes. Who's going to put this up on their sock or knock and watch the table scroll by?
I am.
You got a question? I'm sorry, I'm a little bit hard of hearing. On the manufacturing floor? Yeah, so, yep. Yeah, so that's where we, again, rely on inputs from other systems into tools that are managing those IoT assets. So you got PLCs out there, you got things like that. Cybervision that's managing your infrastructure. Yeah, so Cybervision natively integrates with ICE today, so you would have that information right here in these logs as well. Yep. Yep.
Can I answer your question? Yeah. It's a good question. It's a good question. But yeah, we just get more data sources. Oops. So for any of your other use cases that you have, like any other question, like that's a great question. There's gonna be additional questions that you have. I know this is tailored to Comply to Connect, but like the non-Comply to Connect people in the room, like we can work with you, figure out where we could get that other data from to help you identify those devices and correlate those devices, get that context into ICE, into Splunk, and then show you the compliance that you want to follow.
Let's see, does this?
Did you mess up?
Okay, the mouse does work here too, okay. So we're not going to watch that table scroll by. So we said, how do I take this data and put it into reasonable views to see what's going on? So we started off with something like a map view. If you've got multiple different locations that you're doing authentication at, we're showing you, hey, how many devices are actively connected in each of these locations.
How many of you are like, not just in the US from an organization perspective? You have assets outside the US? You have assets in Europe or Asia, right? You have switches, you have endpoints, right? So you'll be able to show that, right? You just look at the table, you get to see it now.
Every time I click, it just goes to the next slide.
Oh.
All right, let's see. Yep, nope.
This is the problem with demos that are recorded. It sucks sometimes, but the wireless is just horrible here.
So I'll just pause through it here, right? So In addition to how devices are connected in different locations, we've got visualizations of those breakdowns of how many of the devices are network infrastructure versus endpoints versus IoT versus unknowns, right? Things that we haven't gotten enough data to classify. How are devices authenticating? What are the switches and routers that are handling that authentication, et cetera? So let's go ahead and go through that. So the next thing we're going to go to is the endpoint compliance view. So this goes back to where I was talking about with having that ability to poke the belly button on what team needs to go get their stuff in order, right? So immediately I see a trend line over time of how devices are authenticating, but I also have those big red boxes that say, hey, I've got a device that's on the network. I was unable to automatically remediate it, and it's non-compliant because the disk is not encrypted. And I'm bubbling that data right up to the top so you immediately can see, hey, it's this C2C Red Hat Enterprise Linux box on this switch on port 6. So immediately I know, hey, call Chad because he's the user that's logged into it.
Chad's doing something wrong, actually. Does this look prettier? Yeah? Yeah. It's better than that table, right? Okay. Maybe.
So the next one we're going to go to is the network compliance. So just like the endpoint compliance, being able to see exactly what my network infrastructure looks like. So I've got 15 network infrastructure devices in the environment. 12 of them have non-compliance problems. Whether it's they don't have network templates applied to them, they have an iOS that's out of date, so I need to upgrade them, or they have a end of sale, end of support power supply or module, or the whole dang box is end of support, like a 3650, let's say, right? So immediately I have that visibility of what do I need to do? And then down at the bottom, you see the inventory list. So we got inventory of both Cisco and non-Cisco devices, but then we also have the number of users that are connected on those devices. So over here, you can see on this particular device, I've got 15 users actively on it. Not saying anybody would do this, but what if, let's pick this 30.1 device, right? It's got 0 users on it. Well, if that's an end user network access device that only would ever have users on it, not servers on it, I could upgrade that iOS right now because I have real-time visibility of who's on it. And there's nobody there, so I can do this right now during the middle of the day. Don't have to wait till next week. Go ahead.
Is that mostly coming in from Catalyst Center?
Yes. Yeah, in this view, it's coming from Catalyst Center. But again, the beauty of Splunk is that we can do these integrations with anything. Mm-hmm. So if you've got SolarWinds or you've got some sort of other network management system, it's just getting the data in, right, and being able to represent it. Unmanaged switches, yeah. So we would be able to see unmanaged switches through the perspective of where that unmanaged switch is connected to a managed switch, right? Because it's unmanaged, so it's not going to have an IP address. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking like a Netgear? Are you talking like a Netgear or a 3Com, like a 4-port little switch that?
What about SXP? Could you use that?
SXP?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. So the unmanaged switch one is an interesting one that comes up a lot of times is that in a lot of the customers that I deal with, unmanaged switches aren't even allowed. So a lot of times the policy is we identified it as Netgear, D-Link, Cisco small business. It's a deny access rule if I've identified it as that type of device. So that unmanaged switch and any of the devices that are plugged into it aren't even going to get on the network. They need to unplug and plug directly into the managed switch. Not always the case, I hear you.
Yeah, you have a lot of unmanaged devices in manufacturing. But so here's a benefit though, when that unmanaged device is going to connect to an uplink that is a managed device at some point, you're still going to get all that data from that unmanaged device. All the MAC addresses are going to be there, so we can still get a lot of that data from that device, through the device, pass through, right?
Yeah.
Yep, you'll just see a lot of MAC addresses on the same port, right? But then you're going to get additional data that you can correlate it.
In the world of identity, right, you're going to see, hey, I've got 7 users or 7 devices authenticated on this one port, which is the uplink port that came from the unmanaged switch into the managed switch, right? Yep. Yeah, you 100% would be able to see that. All right. Our last one here is going to be the step reports. So we talked about step 1 through 5. As I mentioned, step 5, I don't know what the requirements are yet, but step 1 through 4 we have, right? So step 1 is, again, all about identification, classification. You can see we have a breakdown of all the cybercom categories and a breakdown of all the operating systems that we've identified in the environment. So immediately I have that situational awareness of, hey, I've got Raspberry Pis and I've got, OS X devices or D-Link or Netgear devices, right?
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Chad. So obviously this is comply to connect focused, right? Cybercom categories and whatnot, and I'm making him pause it and go back. I'm sorry to Chad. But for the people that don't do comply to connect, just imagine your own reporting of compliance, okay, to your leadership or your CISO or your CIO, whoever you have to report to on your compliance requirements. That's what you're going to have here, right? It's not going to be comply to connect. It's going to be whatever you need to then send that report up the chain, all right? Sorry, Chad.
That's all right. So when we get into step 2, anybody remember what step 2 was all about? Interrogation?
Hey, you hit the.
Oh, what happened there? Oh, I did it
You
again?
hit the next button.
Dang it. So step 2 is all about interrogation, right? So when we talk about interrogation, we're talking about compliance, but we're also looking at whether the device is managed or unmanaged. So step 2, there's 24 distinct things that need to be reported as step 2. So we have a full count of the device is managed or profiled or unprofiled, or it's gone through these compliance checks, which are the critical ones for Comply to Connect. And then we have things like ownership information, whether it was tagged with ownership information or not. And
So in this one app, you then have to define your policies, your password policies that you're using in this.
I'm sorry, what was?
Yeah, so the question was in this, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to have to define then what your posture policy is that maps to each one of those corresponding categories.
Correct.
To malware.
Yeah, so you would define the posture category, or the question for the recording was, you would have to define what the posture checks are that map to the actual elements that we're showing here, and the answer is yes. Yeah, so
So one of the problems we ran into early on in the process is that if you had multiple endpoint operating systems that you were posture scanning, so if you had Mac, Linux, and PC all in the same one, when you added in your policy for Mac, your policy for Linux, and your policy for PC, it wouldn't report individual results. It would just say that no system matched those three
Yes.
policies. It was almost
you did it as like a compound condition for all the different operating systems, yeah.
You have to do individual policies for each one.
Yeah.
It's a limitation within ICE right now. We're working with the view to try to fix it. But you have to do individual policies for each individual requirement on the individual OS.
right.
Yeah, so you have a whole bunch of policies, right?
And then take in the reporting app, I would list the three policies and we try to match them against all three policies and say that
Yes,
this for this
exactly.
still produces a correct result.
And you're using version 1 of the reporting app? No? You're on the beta? Okay, because version 2 is supposed to fix that. You're supposed to be able to select, it's supposed to fix that. Yeah, so let me get with you afterwards and see what you have and make sure the team's getting you the latest version of that. All right?
All right, so now when we get over to step 3, anybody remember what step 3 was about? Remediation, right? So we reported on what can be done. This is showing how you can export each of these reports, so if you wanted to manually report it, you can. But when we get to step 3, we're talking about remediation. So we're going to show you, get back to those syslog values that we were looking at earlier. Here's how many times I had to remediate this particular endpoint. You can see this one in the middle, I've had to remediate 4 different times for 2 different posture checks. What's going on with that endpoint? Is somebody going in and disabling the firewall and I'm having to remediate it every time?
Yes.
That's highly possible. So the scenario is, you have that full visibility of what remediations are taking place on what endpoints and what's the status of actually automating the remediation. The last one, very table view. We're still working on some visualizations to make this a little bit prettier. But this is that ICAM report. So it's a detailed information of how many times did the user connect on wired, wireless, VPN, and all the identity information that goes along with that authentication. So with that, I think that is now actually the end of this demo. So a lot of data, we represented it as data, and you can think of what are all the additional things that I can do based on all of that data. So again, if a device is showing up as non-compliant because I couldn't remediate the disk encryption, how do I want to then take action? So it's going to take some type of action, whether that's an automation through scripting. It's going to take some type of action like, hey, I need to notify the end user that your device is going to be a little bit slow because I'm going to turn on disk encryption, which can consume CPU resources, et cetera, right? So the beauty of using Splunk to do this is that we can build any kind of automated action that we want. We can open up a Slack space or a WebEx Teams space and say, hey, user, your device is reporting noncompliance. You're going to have limited access to the network, so don't open up a trouble ticket saying that I can't get to site XYZ. Here's why, right? So we're working on remediating your system. Execution's already taken place. Give it X amount of time to complete, right? All those different automations can take place very, very simply. And on top of that, I can now take this compliance information and turn it into real-world policy and start zero trusting this comply to connect thing that we've been talking about for a while, right? Start taking it from just a simple, you're compliant or non-compliant, put you into a certain segment. Now I can start affecting your use case or affecting what you can browse to. So I'm going to go a little bit Quentin Tarantino on this demo because I start at the end and then I go back to the beginning, right? And then I think I go to the end again, but nevertheless. So what we're going to do here is this is the workflow that we're going to do in this demo. And we're going to see a device authenticated to ICE. That device has been reported as having multiple Cat 1 vulnerabilities, right? Not a CVSS score, which is the standard integration with Cisco ICE and Tenable, but Tenable also has all of this stuff around STIGs, or category 1s,
Yeah.
right?
Everyone understands what category 1 issues are, right? Anyone that doesn't?
Major vulnerability.
Yeah, and STIGs, those are DISA like security standards. I'm just being, they're compliance requirements for those who don't do DISA work. They're just compliance requirements you have to follow.
So that device is going to be found to have a bunch of STIG, 32, I think, off the top of my head, 31, 32 STIG category 1 findings on it. Well, guess what? I can't get that STIG data right into ICE and say, hey, this device had a lot of category 1s. I can do it based on CVE, but maybe I just want to say, hey, if you have category 1s that a patch has been out for, I want to say you're limited based on that. Well, guess what? I get all that data into Splunk, right? We talked about collecting data that's important to us. I'm getting all that vulnerability data. I'm also getting all those STIGs that are associated with those vulnerabilities, right? So we're going to go in and we're going to say, hey, in Splunk, show me all the endpoints that have some type of reported vulnerability based on category 1, 2, or 3. Give me a count of them. Tell me whether it's been patchable for over 10 days or not. And then guess what? I'm going to use PXGrid Direct to share that information directly into ICE so that when that device connects, it doesn't have access. And then lastly, it doesn't have access because I'm using security group tags to my next generation firewall to say, you can't browse to dating websites because you have category 1 findings. Real relevant, right? But we're gonna see it, all right? So hopefully I'll try and talk as fast as this goes. So we're going to go into the ICE system, and we're going to go and look at the live sessions that are on. And this is where my Tarantino comes out, is that we've already got a device that's out of compliance and in this vulnerable Cat 1 state, right? So we're going to go into our live sessions, and we'll see the MAC address. We're going to scroll to the right, and we're going to see that it's in a limited access state, and it has a security group tag of vulnerable category 1. So this is our endpoint in question. I'm logged into it. Here's our vulnerable Cat 1 security group that's assigned. And then further to the right, we're going to see that it's in a C2C limited authorization profile. That C2C limited authorization profile can be a separate VLAN. It can be whatever you want it to be, right? So now we're going to go to the firewall, and we're going to see that in the firewall, because I've integrated it with ICE, my firewall is intelligent to every single security group tag that exists, and I have a policy that is defined for what policy or what actions I want to limit for someone that has vulnerable Cat 1 security group tag associated to it. So we're going to go into our policy here. We're going to look at the actual authorization or the firewall policy. You can see very simple policy. We just allow everything through except for these vulnerable people. We're going to block them from being able to browse. So you can see we go into the details. One object on the inside, vulnerable Cat 1. and then destination is any dating site. They're not going to be able to do their jobs, right? So here we can see that, that vulnerable cat1 object is a dynamic object. You see DYN there next to it on the right side. Well, guess what? Here's all the security group tags that exist in the Identity Services Engine. So I can build policies off of that. I don't have to build policies off of IP address or username. I can build it based off of a large segmented group. This is micro-segmentation with security group tags. So here's our user. He's going to open up his web browser, and he's going to be like, hey, I need to go to Cisco because I want to watch the keynote. Right? So we go to cisco.com. Cisco.com, hopefully, is still not a dating site. So it goes ahead and loads up just fine. Right? They're going to say, hey, I need to go check out Facebook and look at my, what was that, Farmland or whatever that Facebook game was that everybody was playing for years. Right? Facebook's going to load up just fine. But they also want to go, maybe see how many farmers are available on the dating market, so they try to go to farmers only. Guess what? They can't get there, right? It's just going to sit here. It's eventually going to time out. I actually don't wait for it to time out, but we're going to actually go look at what's really happening behind the scenes.
It got
All right.
denied.
So back on the firewall, we're going to go and we're going to look at, hey, why can't this user get to farmersonly.com? We're going to go in, we're going to look at the actual events, connection events. We're going to type in at the top, we're going to do a filter, we're going to look for that particular source IP of that device. And what we're going to see is we're going to see a couple blocks on port 80 and 443. And when we bring up the details of it, you're going to see that it's because it's got that vulnerable cat1 security group tag. And I typoed, yep, come on. Here we go. So right here at the top, we're going to see, a block on port 80 right there, and another one on port 443 above it. And when we click on that details, it's going to expand out and show me over here on the right, when we scroll down, source SGT, vulnerable cat1. And that's exactly why that device is not getting to it. Matching that rule, which is a deny rule, and the user can't get there. So how do we get to that state? Right? We talked about Tenable, scan the endpoint. Well, I can tell you the reason why is that this device, at this current moment in the demo, has Firefox like 113 installed, and we're on like 139, right? So quite a few revs old. So we're going to go over into the Security Center, and we're going to look at the data there, right? And the key point here is that for this to actually happen, you don't need to do all these logins. I'm showing you how it actually happened as real world, but all this stuff is happening in the ether automatically as the devices are being scanned, et cetera. So we're going to the details of this endpoint. We can see, all of these critical vulnerabilities for all these old Firefox versions. And when we go into the details of the most recent one, which is 138, or actually I think it was 139 by the time I finished the demo. But this vulnerability specifically, there's our STIG severity, right? So not only am I getting CVEs through normal scanning into ICE, but now I'm showing you how you can bring in anything. So STIG severity being the case here. You can see it's showing you, hey, there's an install. We're running 114, and the fix is 138. The fix is already out. It's been out. You can actually see additional information like patch published. So we're going to use that information in our Splunk search as well to provide this contextual data that we could never get before to make a policy decision on the fly. So back over on ICE, you can see there's the STIGs by endpoint. That's what my PXGrid direct connector is called. That's where I'm saying, hey, go get the STIGs by endpoint from Splunk because it knows about all these STIGs. And that's applied to this authorization policy, so when it hits that STIGs by endpoint rule, it gets blocked. So now we're going to talk about PXGrid Direct. So as I mentioned, PXGrid Direct gives you the ability to do a lot of things that you can do easily, quickly, very, very simply, just with an API call. So in Splunk, what we did is we started a search, and we said, show me all the endpoints from the index of Tenable that have STIG vulnerabilities and how many, and if they've been patched or not, if it's over a 10-day period, right? So I'm going to go into this report that we have built in Splunk. When we open it up, we're going to see it gives us a table view of here's a whole bunch of MAC addresses with the counts of each STIG that they have. I've got this guy here with 43 category 1s, right?
My computer.
Very healthy environment, by the way. Just so over on page 4 is where the MAC address in question, 0B68, that's our endpoint that we're talking about. It's got 31 category 1s on it. Beauty of Splunk is in our Splunk searches, we can say, hey, if this is greater than or less than, let's add this new value of true false. So it's got more than 10 vulnerabilities that are category 1 that have been patched for over 10 days. So now I'm going to set that flag of, hey, this device is out of compliance, or category 1 over limit is what you see the table. So this is what the search looks like. So that's where we're doing all of our eval statements to say if 1 over 10, true or false. And then all of this comes into this table view. Again, one of the beauties of getting all this data in and then being able to build a API endpoint for anybody to be able to query. So now we take this data and we can put it into a Python script that creates an API endpoint for anyone to query, grab that data in, and represent it as additional context of attributes. So that same search that you just saw in Splunk is right here in that Python script. So now I'm telling Splunk, when anybody calls and says, give me the STIGs by endpoint, it's going to run this search and it's going to report back with a JSON output. I'm going to copy that API code or URL, and I'm going to post it into a web browser, and I'll zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit more readable for you here in a second. But there you go. There's that table that we saw in Splunk as a JSON API output directly into any API that calls it. So now with PXGrid Direct, again, the beauty is that I can pull that data in and I can say, now I know this MAC address has 31 category 1 findings, and it had more than 10, because it's 31, and all of them are over 10 days old. So we're going to go through building the PXGrid Direct connector here. So that's where I'm going to take that URL that you just saw us browse to manually. I'm putting it right into that URL there. I'm authenticating to the API, and then once I authenticate to that API, it's going to ask me for a sample. So it's going to go out and it's going to reach out and say, hey, does this API work? What's the JSON response? And we're going to see an example of that after we set our schedule. So you can do this as frequently, a full sync as frequently as every 12 hours. You can do incremental syncs as frequently as 1 hour. You can also, if you just caught it, there was a pusher function too, so you can do a pull or push. But now I'm going to punch in here. I'm going to say, show me what the values of results are from that API. So it's going to go ahead and just grab the first record that comes back, and immediately these become values in the database that I can now use as elements of compliance. So now I say include all these values in the dictionary, and now every MAC address that comes in, I have my true false of over the limit, and I have my counts of number of vulnerabilities that they have. Right? So this is where I can associate MAC address, how you correlate the data from that PXGrid Direct connection to the data that's happening in Splunk. And then we're going to go back and we're going to actually look at the raw data of this endpoint and how we see that data after it's gone through PXGrid Direct. So we're going to do a full synchronization of that database. We're going to pull I think there's 82, 86 endpoints that have STIG findings on them. And once that's completed, we're going to go over to the database where all of this data is. And we're going to see that raw, nitty-gritty JSON in a pretty user interface where I can now just say, hey, if this equals that, then I'm going to limit the level of access. So here in the PXGrid Direct endpoints, I go to STIGs by endpoint. Here's all the 86. I forget, I didn't see what the count was, but we're going to go find that MAC address again. There it is, 0B68. I click on it. On the right side, boom. There's that JSON. I've now done an integration that's not documented, that nobody, it's not something that I had to ask the business unit to develop. You can do anything that you want. Just like you can do script conditions, with this you can build any API that you want to bring any additional data that you want in. Back on Splunk, I'm showing you how full circle, I could turn around and say, hey, show me how many times endpoints have gotten blocked because of this requirement. So now we're looking at, hey, that 105 endpoint tried to go to farmers only 75 times or whatever it was. So that full circle of situational awareness of device got marked as non-compliant because of category 1 findings, got put it into a limited access state, and we were monitoring what they were trying to do in that limited access state. So now I open up Firefox, it remediates, or it updates itself to version 139 now, I believe. And we're going to do that same thing, but guess what? This employee is now going to be able to find love in the fields of West Virginia or Nebraska, Kansas, whatever it may be. But yeah, so we're now on 139. We could still get to Cisco. We could now get to farmers only. So that full circle of access, no access, back to full access, all with an integration of anything that your mind can think of. And ta-da!
Voila. I'm gonna let Chad take a breath. That was a lot, right? That was amazing. How many think that was amazing? Right? That's pretty awesome stuff, right? How about Chad?
Yeah, and this is just showing the last step of going into context visibility endpoints, and now I can see, hey, that current status of that endpoint is compliant. It's on the network with full access. It no longer has vulnerable Cat 1s on it. I think it might have 2, but our rule set was to have more than 10 that were over 10 days old, right? You can manipulate that however you want again. But we get into that raw nitty-gritty details of all of this data that you have from an endpoint just from ICE alone, Active Directory information, et cetera. But device compliance, compliant, and it's not in a vulnerable Cat 1 security group tag anymore. So that being said, kind of a recap of all the steps. Step 1, identification, classification. Step 2, basic network access control. 3 and 4 is all about remediation and full NAC and segmentation that we just showed you. And then step 5, that full situational awareness, fully integrated of, I put this device into a limited access state, my firewall was enforcing it, my firewall was telling me that it's doing stuff it shouldn't be doing because it's out of compliance. And then all of that goes into a zero trust. And even though dynamic policy change is part of Comply to Connect, that is a very, very big part of zero trust, as well as I think identity is that key initial stepping stone of zero trust for anybody, right? You got to know what the device is, who's on that device, et cetera, to start that whole flow of dynamic policy.
So before we go to the next slide, I just want to ask the class, how many of you want this? Yeah? Okay. How many of you need this? You might not want it, but you might need it, right? Even if you're not in the C2C space, right? For the people that I kind of split in the room a little bit, that aren't in the C2C space, like this is something that you're gonna need. You're gonna need it. Your CISOs are gonna love this. Your CIOs are gonna love this. Your CTOs are gonna love this.
Yep.
All right. How do we do today? I'm just curious. Everyone like the session today? Yeah? All right. Everyone learn? Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone learned something today that they didn't know when they walked in the room? Yeah? How many of you felt entertained today? Huh? Show of hands. I know, I made a lot of jokes about myself. I know, right? But did you feel entertained? Right? So a couple things. Obviously, we have surveys. I'm sure if some of you have been at Cisco Live, you know we got to do the surveys. They help us out. It gives us feedback on how we've done, what we can improve. Obviously, we had some little issues here and there that we got to improve on, but the biggest thing is that we put a lot of effort into these sessions. There's some things that we have no control over. We don't control the heat or the coldness. So if you're too cold or too hot, we have no control over that. We can't control where there's power plugs or where there's desks or chairs. We can't control the noise outside, if it's loud or there's music upstairs. We can't control the wireless, but we can control these slides, the demos that Chad just did, right? And how we present to you, how we entertain you. How many of you believe that we did our job today? Show of hands. Awesome. So when you take a moment later and you do the surveys, please reflect that for us, all right? Because we want to make sure that if we did our job, that we should get the right scores to show that we did our job. Does that make sense? Yeah? Chad?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you all being very interactive today. I love having questions and not just being up here speaking nonstop. Zig helped me out with that, with jumping in every so often, which I love. Yeah, I appreciate all y'all's time today. If you have questions, clarifications, Like I said, I'll post links for like the click-through demo so you can do that Splunk demo on your own and show it to your peers that weren't able to make it out here this week. I'll put all that stuff in the room. There's a QR code on some cards. If you want to take that, there's a 2-page white paper on Comply to Connect, how Cisco does it, with some screenshots of the Splunk demo as well. So feel free to take one of those cards. You don't have to download it right now. And I thank you for your time today and look forward to seeing y'all hopefully next year if we evolve on this a little bit more.
And
I promise you we're going to put some AI into it.
We are going to put some AI into it, right? And we have 10 minutes left of the session, so if you want to stay and ask questions, feel free. We'll be here still for at least 10 minutes, okay? Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.